Okay. B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach. Let's learn some Torah. We spoke last week about Yaakov and Esav, the birth of Yaakov and Esav. We spoke about their names, where their names came from. And now, Be'ezrat Hashem, I want to continue the story with last week's parasha, and then maybe get into the start of this week's parasha. Okay, we have ourselves our Yaakov and Esav. We have ourselves. Okay, let's get into a little bit of the midrash world. Let's talk about the stories on the parasha. So Rivka Imenu, the holy Rebecca, finally gets pregnant. 20 years of trying, she finally gets pregnant, and we find that with the imahot, with our foremothers, with the great mothers, with Sarah Imenu, with Sarah, with Rivka, with Rebecca, as well as with Rachel, with Rachel, they have a hard time getting pregnant. It takes a very long time. A lot of prayers, a lot of years go by. Anybody know why? The rabbis speak about this. Why did it take so long for the imahot, for our holy mothers to get pregnant? Actually, before that, there's one of the imahot, one of the four mothers, who got pregnant very easy. Who is that?
Leah,
Leah. Beautiful, Ben. Why Leah? Why did Leah get pregnant so quick?
because she wasn't supposed to get married to Avram.
Oh, she wants to get married to Yaakov. Interesting.
Yaakov.
They say a little different. They say similar, one step more. They say that Leah felt hated. Now, why did she feel hated? It could be because she wasn't supposed to marry him in the first place already. The love wasn't the same way. But Leah felt that Yaakov hated her, and that pain was so great. So God says, I feel so bad for her. Let's just give her a bunch of kids right away. But it seems to be like the initial way that God deals with the mothers is to slow down having kids. Any ideas why? So the rabbis explain that when it comes to having children, that's one of the most essential things that people want to have in life. It was only in the 20th century where people started to think they don't want to have kids. But for most of history, women want to have children, even men want to have children. You want to have kids. You want to have a continuation of your life. You want to go to the next generation, especially when God is promising really big things. It's a big deal for somebody. To not have it pushes the imahot, pushes our foremothers to pray, to have a connection with God. When we go back to the story of Adam and Eve, everybody gets punished in different kinds of ways. Adam has to go work very hard. Eve has to have the trouble of giving birth. But when it comes to the snake is known to have the worst punishment of all, because his punishment was Hashem chops off his legs and sends him out and says, "Go and eat the dust of the earth." So the commentators ask, eating the dust of the earth, but that's a good thing. That's like an awesome thing, because that means you have food everywhere you go. But if you have food everywhere you go, you don't need God anymore. You don't have to ask and pray. Here in Israel, we rely on the rain. We have to pray to Hashem. Hashem, please. Please give me some rain so I could have some parnasah. But that makes a connection. Hashem wanted the connection of the imahot, so therefore he makes them work for it. It takes time. It's not easy. Life is going to be difficult, but in the difficulty, we're going to find a way to connect to God. I think most people in the world today have an easier time, sadly, getting closer to God when times are hard than when times are good. All of a sudden, when times are hard, you wake up, oh, there's Hashem, I got to get to Hashem, I have to get to all of that, as opposed to, when times are good, where it's a little bit harder just to open up your eyes to that. Okay. Rivka gets pregnant. Mazal tov, mabruk, b'siman tov, u'mazal tov. Rivka gets pregnant. But it's a weird pregnancy. And all of a sudden, inside her stomach, things are going crazy. Now, it could be things are going crazy. It's her first pregnancy. How does she know what it's going to be like? But she really feels that something is wrong. Maybe you could say she seems bigger than the average pregnant lady. But the Torah says she just felt craziness in her stomach. Now, what are we going to find out? We're going to find out she has twins. So that might explain a lot of the issues. But the Midrash tells a side story. The side story of what was actually going on inside her stomach. Who knows the story of what was taking place inside her stomach? Yeah, Zoe.
Wasn't there like two wars, like Yaakov against Esav?
Oh, symbolically, Yaakov is fighting against Esav inside the womb. They say there's a debate, there's a fight between the two, a physical fight. Who's going to leave first? And it sounds like Esav's willing to go kamikaze. And actually, there was a gynecologist who did a whole perush, give a whole explanation to this section about what does it mean that the hand is over here and this one's grabbing there. breach, not breach, which is it backwards or not? What's actually going on inside the stomach from a medical perspective? But it sounds like things were really dangerous in there. But they're fighting back and forth. But there's a midrash that says something happened when she would walk by certain buildings. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Ben, what happened?
When she would walk by a shul, like Yaakov would kick, and when she would walk by, I don't know what the other one was, but Esav would kick like a bad place.
Okay, excellent. It says when she would walk by a house of avodah zarah, of idolatry, Esav would try to get out, like try to push his way out. And then you mentioned when she walked by a shul. There weren't really many shuls back then, meaning the only Jews in the world are really her and her husband, and Avraham is still alive. Sarah's already dead. Now, there's not that many Jews around right now. So it actually says she didn't walk by a shul, she walked by a yeshiva. What yeshiva is around? So she walked by a yeshiva. Where in the world do we have a yeshiva? But it says when she would walk by a yeshiva, Yaakov's trying to get out. So she walks by the good places, Yaakov wants to get out. She walks by the bad places, Esav wants to get out. So now, first up, what's this yeshiva she walks by? So in the Midrash, now we're in Midrash land. You don't find this anywhere openly in the Torah, but it's all hidden behind the scenes. Hidden behind the scenes, the Midrash teaches us the world had a yeshiva. The yeshiva was known as the yeshiva of Shem Va'ever. Who was Shem?
Noach's son.
Noach's son, beautiful. And you see, we have Noach's son is Shem. We come from Shem. Actually, the modern word anti-Semite really is anti-Shemite. In Hebrew, it's anti-Shemi. Anti-Semite means I hate the people that come from Shem. The word anti-Semite is actually an anti-Semitic word. It's actually a Jew-hating word because they didn't want to say Jews are Jews. So they're Semites, they come from somewhere else. It actually is an anti-Semitic way to be an anti-Semite, and it really means Jew-hater. But it's important to realize, because for those of you that are going to be on college campuses in a year from now in America, you might come across, I remember when I was at University of Florida, this happened to me when I was there. There used to be an Arab group that was anti-Israel. It was called Nakba 48. It was like an SJP group back then, where they used to say, you can't call me an anti-Semite. I'm a Semite, because Arabs also come from Shem. You can't call me an anti-Semite. I'm also a Semite. So the truth of the matter is, that's just semantics, because anti-Semite really doesn't mean anti-Semite. It means anti-Jew. It means a Jew-hater. So if you ever encountered that on campus where somebody tells you can't call me an anti-Semite because I'm a Semite, you should say, no, you didn't understand me. I meant that you hate Jews. You're a Jew-hater. Because that's really what anti-Semite means. But the idea of the word was, it comes from the word Shem, because Shem is the son of Noach, and eventually we're going to come from Shem. But at this point, Shem himself, he's not a Jew, Shem. According to some Midrashim, he was the Kohen, he was the priest of Yerushalayim. Malchit Tzedek, according to Rashi, is Shem. So he was a holy person who had a yeshiva. Who's Ever? So Yeshivat Shem Va'ever. Who's Ever? You know what Ever is? It's known as Yeshivat Shem Va'ever. Some learn it as one yeshiva. Some learn it as two yeshivas. Shem had a yeshiva maybe in Yerushalayim, and Ever might have had a yeshiva in Beersheba. So there's two separate yeshivas taking place at the same time. But who was Ever? Ever was the grandson of Shem. If you go back to the lineage back in Bereshit, back in Noach, it says Shem, and then 2 generations later we have Ever, and then 6 generations later we have Avraham. You know we call Avraham Ivri? Why do we call Avraham Ivri? So we mentioned a couple weeks ago in class, Avram's called Avraham Ivri, the Hebrew. Why are we called Hebrews? Why is Hebrew called Hebrew Ivrit? So according to a simple reading, because Avram passed over the Jordan or passed over the Euphrates, he was Avar. He crossed over, so that's literally he crossed over the water to get to Israel from Iraq. Reason number 2, why is he called Ivri? Because the whole world is on one side when it comes to morality and God, and Avraham is on the other side. He's Avraham Ivri, he passed over to be separate from everybody else. For many generations, we thought, oh, look at how great Avram was. He's the only one willing to fight for God in the entire world. He's by himself. But thank God, we Jewish people, that was Avram's generation. In our generation, we've already inspired enough of the world to be our backing, to be our allies. Sadly, this war has taught us we're still like Avram Avinu, where we understand morality, and the whole world, for some crazy reason, including some of the biggest human rights organizations in the world, do not care about human rights when it comes to Jews. We are the Ivrim. We're always on one side of the Jordan. But then, another interpretation is, why is he called Avram Ivri? Because he comes from Ever. This guy Ever, the grandson of Noach, is called Ever. So he's the Ivri. Now, why would he be called Ivri? We could be called any of the 10 generations until Avram, or any of the previous 9 generations. Why is he called Ivri? Because Ever himself had a yeshiva. They had this yeshiva, but it was different than, but if they had a yeshiva, anybody ever heard that Avram was the first monotheist? Avram was the first guy that taught everybody about God? Now that can't be true, because Avram was alive when Noah was alive. Noah died when Avram was 48 years old. I'm sorry, he died when he was 58 years old. Noah died when Avram was 58 years old. So they actually coexisted in the same generation. And for sure, Noah was a monotheist because he spoke to God. So they say Shem and Ever were also monotheists. But why were they different than Avraham? Because Avraham, and this is what makes Judaism different than the rest of the earlier religions, we had a mission to try to change the world. Avram had a mission to teach. He wasn't satisfied just being in the yeshiva. Shem and Ever, they stayed in the yeshiva, they never left. And it says in the Midrash, Avram spent some time there. Yitzchak, after the Akedah, spent 2 or 3 years there. Yaakov is going to study there as a kid. And when he runs away in the start of our parsha, he's going to spend 14 years there. And Yeshivat Shem Ve'ever is going to pop up here and there throughout the stories. But one of the main places it pops up is in this story when Rivka is pregnant. When she walks by their yeshiva, that's when Yaakov tries to get out. You guys want a fun question? Fun Midrash question. So, anybody ever heard? There's a beautiful teaching we teach our kids based on the Talmud that something very special happens with the baby in the womb. Anybody know what happens with the baby in the womb? Any ideas? What happens to the baby in the womb?
Is it that they're taught the entire Torah?
They're taught. Who teaches them the entire Torah? Excellent, easy. Who teaches them?
An angel?
An angel. They say an angel comes down into the womb, lights a candle, which is why the woman has heartburn, and teaches the whole Torah to the baby. So little baby us, when we were babies, men and women, learn everything A to Z. And then after, right before we're born, says the angel gives us a little smack on the mouth, touches us here under the nose, and we forget everything. But it's really deep inside. So we actually, when we start to learn, you start connecting in a much deeper way to the Torah because you already had it. You already learned it once in your life. And the truth is, if you guys don't believe me, it's right under your nose. Just go check it out. Just go learn it. And we have it out there. So here's the question. If the angel is teaching Torah in the womb, so that's beautiful. That's awesome. It's great to learn Torah in the womb. Then how come? Okay, so if the angel's teaching Torah, it's kind of like a little bit like a Garden of Eden in the womb. So it makes sense that Esav wants to go out. When they walk by the idolatry, it makes a lot of sense that Esav wants to leave. Because Esav doesn't want to learn Torah. But how come Yaakov wants to leave and go to the yeshiva if Yaakov's learning Torah from an angel? You have a question? How come Yaakov wants to leave the womb if he has an angel teaching him the whole Torah? He's learning everything in the womb. Why do you want to leave? So I heard 2 beautiful ideas. Reason number 1 is because in the womb, it's being spoon-fed. Nobody wants to be spoon-fed. We want to be adults when it comes to Torah. But Ezrat Hashem, this year, you guys, I have a dream for you guys to start learning on your own. For those that haven't learned, haven't opened up your own books. When you learn on your own, all of a sudden you become independent. You put your own effort into it. It makes for a much stronger Torah. So reason number 1, Yaakov didn't want to be spoon-fed anymore. He was ready to go out there and learn on his own. Reason number 2, take a little deeper, is sociology. If he's in the womb, not by himself, there's a twin in the womb with him. There's Esav. But what do you know about Esav? Esav's this evil guy. If your neighbor, if your chavruta, if your partner is so evil, that's going to rub off on you very, very bad. You could have the greatest teacher in the world, but if your surroundings are negative, it's not going to help you. A little bit of advice for those of you that are still choosing your university for 2 years from now. I've actually already heard that in Israel, the applications for next year at universities in Israel are going crazy. They're going up like crazy from foreigners that want to come because there's a little bit more fear happening on college campuses in America right now on the safety for Jews, the environment for Jews. But there's many universities in America right now that are still pretty decent for Jews. You know, I went to my alma mater, University of Florida. The president has come on very strong over there. There's places like, we have a bunch of our alumni are in Maryland right now, in Binghamton, where I'm hearing the university's been pretty good to the Jews over there. There's a good population over there. But even when you go to these universities, where you're living, Which dorms are you choosing? In Maryland, you have the dorms that are next to the kosher dining hall, and you have the dorms that are on the other side of campus. Where do you choose to live? Who is your environment? Yaakov's teaching us a lesson. You could have the best teacher in the world, you have the best professor, the best rabbi, the best mentor, but if your neighbors are the most evil, rotten people, it's a lot more dangerous. It's better to jump out, go to the yeshiva, even though there's no angels in the yeshiva, at least no open angels in the yeshiva. That's a better option than having a bad surrounding. Okay, let's fast forward. So now Rivka doesn't know what to do because she doesn't know she has twins, and she's like, these kids are like jumping around doing crazy stuff. So it says she goes to ask God what to do. Now, how do you ask God what to do? Like, how do you ask God what's going on? So I would have thought she started praying to God. But Rashi says no. She actually went to the yeshiva. She went to the yeshiva of Shem, and Shem was a holy guy. And he said, Shem, do you know what's going on? And Shem looks at her and tells her, yeah, you have twins. And you should know, the twins are going to fight. They're both going to be great nations. But the younger one is going to be greater than the older one. He's giving her prophecy. Yitzchak's not there. Yitzchak never gets that prophecy. Now remember that point when Rivka tries to trick Yitzchak and doesn't tell him straight. And she does trick Yitzchak. But interesting, in this first prophecy, Rivka is told that the younger one is going to be greater, but Yitzchak is not. And when she finds out that she has two kids in her stomach, she gets calm. Everything's okay. How come? Why is everything okay? So Yaakov makes sense. He wants to go to yeshiva. That makes sense. But why is everything okay if Esav wants to go to Avodah Zarah, if he wants to go to idolatry? Why do you want to have a kid like that? That's not good. So Rivka, I heard a beautiful answer. Rivka isn't worried about Avodah Zarah. She's not worried about idolatry. Why is she not worried about that? Because she grew up in a house of idolatry. She knows what evil is, and she also knows how to conquer it. She knows how to be a Baal Tshuva. She knows how to step it up when you have to step it up. So Rivka's not scared if Esav has a tendency towards Yetzer Hara. Esav's going to fall to his Yetzer Hara, sadly, but she feels like she can get him out of it. What was she scared about? When she thought she only had one kid, she was scared that my kid was wishy-washy. She says, oh my God, I walk by idolatry, he wants to go out and party. I walk by the yeshiva, he wants to go and learn. What kind of like inconsistent kid is this? Are you holy? Are you not holy? Are you tameh? Are you tahor? What's with the wishy-washiness? To be a Jew, we're not wishy-washy people. We step it up. We're a stiff-necked nation. We're gonna fight for God when we fight for God. We do things with full force. Like, what is this wishy-washiness? I can't have a kid like that. That's why she was freaking out. But once she found out, oh no, I just have one kid that has a big Yetzer Hara, oh, that's not a problem. Big Yetzer Hara, that we can try to deal with. Rivka's like, I dealt with that when I grew up in Batuel in Lavan's house. I know how to fight against that. Okay. Another idea I heard, the Chabadnikim have this idea. There's different kind of rabbis in the world, different kind of rebbitzins in the world. You have these holy rabbis that are like tzaddikim, very righteous, and they never leave the yeshiva. You go to them for a bracha. There's rabbis like this, there's rebbitzins, there's in Bnei Brak, not too far from the dorms, there's Rebbitzin Kolodetsky, it's Rav Chaim Kanievsky's daughter. Once a week, she does a big hafrashat challah with hundreds of women. Maybe we'll take the girls there this year at some point. But she's a very holy, holy woman who doesn't leave Bnei Brak. You go to her for blessings. You go to the rabbis for those are holy people. That's one type of rabbi. And they're very important. And that's what Yaakov originally was supposed to be. Yaakov was going to be the guy that sits and learns Torah, stays holy. Esav was supposed to be the other kind of rabbi. You have certain rabbis and rebbitzins who they don't just sit in the yeshiva, but they actually go out places. They go to college campuses. They go, they go to big parties on Pesach and on Purim and read the Megillah outside of clubs. They're going to places that are not necessarily the most holy, but they want to go there to try to inspire, to try to make a difference, to try to bring people closer. And so I heard the Chabadnikim want to say that was the original plan for Esav. That he was the guy with the big Yetzer Hara who's going to go out there and try to change the world. And that's much harder. That's much more physical. Okay. The story goes on, and the two of them are born. We have twins. Esav comes out first. As Esav's coming out, as we said last week, Yaakov grabs onto his heel. He grabs onto the Ekev. But Esav comes out first. Yaakov comes out second. And then they grow up. They get a little bit older. And Esav becomes a hunter. A hunter is much more physical. It deals more with blood. It's much more violent. He's also out there in the fields much more. He's an ish sadeh, he's each of a field. But interestingly, who else was an ish sadeh? We said this last week. Yitzchak. Yitzchak was working out the ground. He's working on the land out there. He actually was trying to build Israel too. He's also called an ish sadeh. When Rivka's coming back to go marry Yitzchak for the first time she sees him, he's outside praying in the sadeh. He's out there in the field. What's he doing there? Because he works the land, and God's going to bless him me'ah sharim. You're going to bless him 100-fold for his hard work. So in certain aspects, Yitzchak and Esav have a little bit of a shared occupation, because we're going to see in a second that Yitzchak's going to favor Esav for his hunting, as the Torah says. But Yaakov is different. Yaakov is the ish tam yoshev ohalim, which means he's more simple, he's more pure, and he's known as the ish ohalim, which means he lives in the tents. Why is he in the tents? On the simple level, because he's a shepherd. Shepherds hang out outside, and you build little tents as you travel around along the way. You have these temporary dwelling places as you walk with your sheep. And if you're a shepherd, you have a lot more time to think. A lot more time to think, see what's going on. The sadeh people, the ground people, are working with their hands much more and doing a lot of praying that the rain and everything works out fine. The shepherds, it's a little bit more of a lighter job in the idea that you could sit around a lot more while they're grazing and think. According to the Midrash, the Ohel are the yeshivas. That actually Yaakov spent time learning in Yeshivat Shem Va'ever. He was a learner. And they say the original plan that Yitzchak at least had was that Yaakov will be the guy that learns Torah. He'd be the guy that's focused on spirituality, while Esav was going to be the worker. And they'd have this joint relationship of Yaakov, the spiritual, Esav, the more physical, and they'd help each other out and have a beautiful, beautiful brotherly relationship. But as we see in history, at least in the book of Breshit, brothers don't get along so much in the book of Breshit. And the story goes on. Now, we're going to learn pretty soon that Esav is considered to be a Rasha. Especially in rabbinic literature, Esav is one of the biggest evil people you're ever going to meet. Esav is such a Rasha. And the question is, did Yitzchak know how bad Esav was or not? Meaning, did Esav fully trick Yitzchak? Rashi says he was a hunter. He was a hunter, it says befiv, which literally means he brought him food to his mouth. He fed his father. But according to Rashi, no, he hunted him with his mouth. He tricked his father and said things to his father that made him look all religious, when really it was a fake out. Or according to the Midrash, he was a murderer. He actually killed somebody and he did terrible things. So did Yitzchak realize? I mean, Yitzchak didn't realize how bad Esav was, but did he realize that Esav was not like this perfect child? Or was he fully tricked? And the commentators read the Torah and they're split. You have some commentaries that are going to go verse by verse and show you in our parsha that Yitzchak totally knew that Esav was not 100% and was trying to fix Esav, trying to inspire Esav, had hopes for Esav, was praying for Esav. And then you have another approach in the commentaries that Yitzchak was totally fooled until the whole trick happens and he realizes what happened with the bracha, and then all of a sudden he cries out because he was fooled so much. Two ways to read the parsha beyond the scope of this class, but those that read the parsha can look at closely in the verses and try to think for yourself, how could you read each pasuk in both different ways? But then something happens. One day, Esav comes back from the field, and he's tired, which some of the commentators say he's depressed. Yaakov is busy cooking lentil soup. Why is Yaakov making lentil soup? Anybody know why? Why is Yaakov doing that? What does lentil soup symbolize in the Torah?
Life.
Circle of life. It's the food of mourning. Until today, if somebody dies, right after the funeral, before everybody comes to Menachem, before everybody comes to console the person, they have what's called a Seudat Havra'ah. Seudat Havra'ah is a meal that a non-mourner makes for the mourners and puts it in their hand directly, which is why on Shabbat we don't put bread in people's hands, we put it on the table, because we don't want to be like mourners. Mourners, you put directly in their hand, you feed them, and you feed them something round. Either eggs, lentils, maybe olives, but you have that whole circle of life theme happening, that whole Lion King thing happening over there. You want to give them something round, remind them about life, and lentils is one of those foods. Actually, in my family custom, a Syrian custom in my house, is we have a food that people like to eat. It's called majadra. They sell it here in Israel too. It's rice with lentils. You put a little fried onion on top. If anybody's eaten it before, put a little yogurt on top as well. But it's called majadra. You can buy it here in Israel in Pinati when you guys get here. So it's rice with lentils. That till today is considered to be a food of mourning. And in my family, the custom was never to eat that on Shabbat or a holiday because it's mourning food. So why is Yaakov making food for a mourner? What happened? Somebody died.
Did Abraham die?
Avram died. Avram died. Esav is ayef. He's tired. And Avram dies on that day. Now, there's two ways to read why did Avram die on that exact day that Esav is tired. Either you can learn chronologically. Avram dies first, and now Esav is tired because he's depressed. Avram was the one guy who loved him, was the ish chesed, the kindness, who prayed for him. And he gets so depressed that he's just like, oh my God, my grandfather died. If he can't survive forever, me, I'm a loser. I'm never going to make it. And he gets total depression zone. Or the other way the rabbis learn is that Avram was promised that he would die a happy life. Esav became a murderer on that day. According to Rashi, he killed on that day. And Avraham, God promised Avram he wouldn't see that happen. So they actually have a teaching that Avram died at the age of 175. He died 5 years early because Yitzchak lived till 180. Why did Avram die early? So that he wouldn't see Esav go off the derech. So he wouldn't see Esav become evil. And that was the day that Esav became evil, which is why Avram dies on the same day. But whatever the reason, whichever came first, if they could work together, if they can't work together, you can look at it yourself. On this day, Avram dies. Esav is depressed. He's tired from a hard day of murder and working or whatever was going on over there. And he comes to Yaakov. He says to Yaakov, wow, that food. Can you give me some of that red stuff? Why is it red? Because it's red lentils. Now, I heard a cool Dvar Torah from a chef. There's a chef here in Israel that has the Crave restaurant. There's a little place in Machane Yehuda, little restaurant over there. The chef there was actually one of Rabbi Khan's students years ago. His brother, Sim, came on the program a couple of years ago. It was in Israel, like 3 years ago. But the older brother, who's the chef, says the following Dvar Torah. He says, lentils, red lentils, before you cook it, are red. After you cook it, they turn brown. They don't keep that same reddish hue. So he says, Esav is known to be rash. He has no patience. He wants the world now. So when he sees it, he goes, give me that red stuff, even before it's fully cooked. Na means raw. Give it to me raw, give it to me straight. I don't have time, I'm starving. Just give me food. Now Yaakov then looks at him and says, you want me to give you food? Okay. Sell me the birthright. Sell me the birthright, which is the double portion, which is the land of Israel. I want to be the owner of this place over here. Esav says, okay. Sells him the birthright for the pot of lentil soup, some bread, and they make a deal. And then it says, the Torah tells us, Vayivez Esav de Bechorah, and Esav made fun, belittled, basically spit on the Bechorah, meaning Esav wasn't doing it because he was starving. He was starving. But why is he starving? Because his attitude is that kind of attitude. But after he gets the food, it says, and then he belittled the birthright, meaning he thought he had the better deal. What's this birthright that I'm only going to get after hundreds of years? Avram was promised the birthright after the kids would be slaves for 400 years. Esav's like, I don't know, what are these stories? What are these fables, these Baba Maisis, these stories that our grandparents told us? You know what? I get a bowl of cholent right now. I get a bowl of lentil soup. It's worth it for the bowl of lentil soup. And Esav feels good about himself, sells the birthright to Yaakov. Now, why did Yaakov feel the need to buy the birthright? Some people look at this story and ask questions on Yaakov. You're taking advantage of Esav when he's vulnerable. Like, why are you doing that? So I heard a beautiful interpretation that I think is so straight. We said in the beginning, what was the original plan? What was Yitzchak's plan for Esav and Yaakov? Esav would be the worker. He'd be the one that makes the food, works the ground. And Yaakov would be the learner, the spiritual one. Now Esav comes to him and says, Yaakov, feed me. But wait a second, Yaakov says, I'm supposed to feed you? But that's your job. You're supposed to be the Bechor who works the ground and you feed me. You want to change jobs with me? Or you want to not do your job? They're not going to change jobs. Because you want to not do your job? Then sell me the birthright. I'll take on your role. And we're going to see that after the second story happens, where Yaakov steals the bracha by pretending to be Esav, at this point, the transformation is going to be almost complete. And Yaakov is going to become Esav to the point that he's going to have to go out to Lavan's house and work in the sadeh and work in the field. And he's going to have to marry Leah, who's originally supposed to marry only Esav. And he's going to take on the role. He's going to become basically Esav. He's going to stop being that guy that learns in yeshiva, and he's going to become that guy that goes out into the field. You people with me? People following me? Am I going too fast? You guys know the storyline? Trying to make it a little juicier a little bit. Trying to get like a little bit, fill in some of the blanks of the story over here. Okay, so that's the first story about Yaakov and Esav. The parsha continues. It then speaks about Yitzchak's stories that we really spoke about last week in last week's recording, and then we get to the next story of Yaakov and Esav. So Esav getting a little bit older, he turns 40, and when he turns 40, he says, "You know what? My Abba Yitzchak, when he was 40, he got married. I want to get married too." So he goes to the local Chitim, the local Canaanites that are living in the land over there, and he marries 2 women from the Canaanites, from the Hittites, the Chitim that live in Israel. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Good thing or bad thing? Bad thing. Because what did we learn in last week's parsha 2 weeks ago? Avraham never wants his kid Yitzchak to marry from the locals. He sends Eliezer to go make a shidduch and bring back Rivka. So now all of a sudden, Esav just goes and marries a bunch of locals, Avodah Zarah people. And the pasuk says they were morat ruach. They brought a lot of problems to the household. That Yitzchak and Rivka were so upset. Some say they brought Avodah Zarah and the smoke of Avodah Zarah into the house, which is going to make Yitzchak even go blind according to this approach. Others say it was angels' tears. Okay, side ideas. But according to this approach, these people came in and they made a big balagan. They made a lot of problems for the purity and the kedusha, the holiness of the house. Okay. But now Yitzchak gets a little bit older, and he's nearing the age of when his mother died. His mother died at 127. He's getting closer. And when you get closer to the age of when your parents die, you start to question, am I going to live forever? So he says, you know what? I'm getting close to dying. He's actually going to go on to live many, many more years. He's going to outlive even Avraham. So while Sarah died at 127, Avraham dies at 175, Yitzchak's going to live until 180. So he's actually going to live quite a bit longer. But he says, what am I going to do? And he says he got old. He's beginning to go blind. He didn't see as clearly. Now Yitzchak always sees very clearly when it comes to spirituality. When it comes to Olam Haba, when it comes to the bigger picture, they say the koch of the Akedah, binding and almost dying for God, he sees the future. His name even means Yitzchak, I'm going to laugh in the future. In the times of Mashiach, we're going to laugh. He's like living in the future. But in this world over here, his eyesight is a little bit more limited. He says, I'm going to die. So you know what I want to do? Let me give a bracha to my Esav. So he calls Esav over to him. He says, Esav, can you go out and hunt for me? Let's make a seudah. Let's make a meal together and I'll give you a bracha. Now, why did he want Esav to go hunting? Just make your own seudah without food. Bring fruit. Why are you so what? Why? He wanted Esav to do a mitzvah. He wanted Esav to do kibur avayim, to prepare something, to be involved in the whole bracha process. He was trying to educate his kid. So he sends Esav away to the field to go bring him back a nice seudah. Rivka, though, sees what's going on, hears what's going on, and says, uh-oh, this is no good. Esav cannot get the bracha. If Esav gets the bracha, the Jewish people are going to have a really big problem. How does she know this? 2 reasons. Reason number 1, because God told her in the prophecy. Reason number 2, she grew up in the house of Lavan, house of Betuel. She knows what it is to be a con artist. She knows what it is to be a cheat and a liar. And she can see in Esav what she saw in her family that she left behind. So Rivka says, can't do this. And she goes to Yaakov and says, Yaakov, you're going to have to trick your father and get the blessing. Now, the big question everybody asks is, why do you have to do it through a trick? Can't you do it through talking to Yitzchak? So the question is better than the answer. But one cool answer that I heard was that Rivka had the prophecy that Esav would be bad. But Yitzchak never did. And Yitzchak always loved Esav with all full heart. She didn't want to taint her husband. She wanted Yitzchak to keep thinking of Esav as that holy person or that potential that she knew he didn't have based on the prophecy. Okay, that's one answer I heard, but the question is stronger. Why do they do it through trickery? But Yaakov tells her, Alo, Ima, I can't do this. I'm scared. Because what if my father catches me? I don't look like Esav. Esav is hairy. I'm not hairy. Her mother says, no problem. and she takes goat hair, which we're going to get back to the goat hair in future parshas, puts it on his skin, on his hands. She then makes a nice meal for him, tells him to go to Yitzchak. But my father might curse me. She goes, if there's a curse, it's on me. For the bracha, it's on me. And the curse is going to come to Rivka. Because once Yaakov runs away, he's never going to see his mom again. She's going to die before he comes back. He's going to be gone for 22 years. But at this point, Yaakov goes in front of his father, and he walks up in front of his father, Yitzchak. He says, Yitzchak. He says, Abba, Baruch Hashem, I came back. Because his father's like, why are you back so quick? He goes, Baruch Hashem, Hashem help me. So when Yitzchak hears this, he goes to him, wait a second, that smells fishy. And he says the famous words, Hakol kol Yaakov, vayedayim yedei Esav. It's the voice of Yaakov, but it's the hands of Esav. He touched his hands and it was hairy, but the voice is of Yaakov. Now, what does it mean the voices of Yaakov? So some might say they sounded different. Esav sounded like he was more mature, hairier, older, probably more deeper voice. But a second approach, a little bit more, I think a little bit more nuanced, is no. Their voices probably sounded the same. They were twins. But when Yaakov said the words Baruch Hashem, Yitzchak is like, wow, Esav doesn't normally talk like that. Something is weird over here. But then when he touches him and he feels that his hand is hairy, he says, oh, maybe Esav is changing. Maybe he's becoming more holy. So according to that way of reading it, Yitzchak realized that Esav wasn't the best and was trying to fix Esav. What he didn't realize was that Yaakov was able to trick him just like Esav could do. So he blesses Yaakov with the parnasah, the tal, the dew. You're going to have a lot of money. You're going to have wealth. It's going to be very good for you. That's the bracha of Yaakov. And then Yaakov leaves. And the second Yaakov leaves, Esav comes in. And instead of being like, oh, Baruch Hashem, he's like, hello, here's your food, eat. Very like gruff, very blunt. And Yitzchak hears this. He's still blind. He goes, hello, what do you mean you're Esav? Who was the guy before me? At that moment, Yitzchak screams a great scream because he realized what had happened. But then he adds 2 words or 3 words. Begam baruch yeh. And let the guy who taught the bracha, let him stay blessed. Because at that point, Yitzchak realized the whole story, that Esav wasn't righteous and that Yaakov was the righteous one. And that's why he says, let the blessing stay where it is. Let Yaakov keep the blessing. And he started to tremble because he realized how evil Esav was, which Rashi even says he felt the gates of Gehenom, of purgatory, opening up under Esav. And Esav cries out, Abba, can I get a blessing? Please, something. He goes, sorry, the blessing's gone. There's no blessings left for you. And Esav really cries out, and he gets angry. He goes, this Yaakov, he tricked me twice. He got my Bechorah, now he gets my Bracha. And Esav starts to cry. Now when Esav starts to cry, the little tshuva, Yitzchak says, oh, ding, 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 I found a little blessing for you. It's a scary blessing for us. Because the blessing says, Yaakov's going to be on top when he keeps Torah and mitzvot, when he's good. When Yaakov is good, Esav will be down. But when Yaakov is evil, when Yaakov breaks the Torah, then Esav will rule on top of him. And the rabbis say this is the Western world versus the Jewish world. We have generations of pogroms. We have generations when we get along. How does it work? It's a yin and yang. When we are on top, when we keep Torah and mitzvot, the Western world will be behind us. When we throw it all away, then the Western world will do pogroms and be on top of us. Okay. Then Esav's very angry. And he goes, when is my father going to die so that I can murder Yaakov? Here we really see Esav's true colors. When can I kill my brother Yaakov? Rivka hears this and goes to Yaakov and says, Yaakov, you got to run away. You got to go to my family in Haran. But Rivka is clever. She then goes to Yitzchak and says something very different to Yitzchak. She goes, Yitzchak, we got to send our son away so he can get married. We don't want him to take a wife from over here. So what happens? Yitzchak says, okay, calls Yaakov over, says, Yaakov, I want to give you a bracha. And now Yaakov blesses him, not with wealth. He already got that bracha, but with a new bracha. Gives him the bracha of spirituality, the bracha of Avraham, of Yitzchak, of God being with him, of being the chosen one. So we see here that it sounds like Yitzchak never planned to give Esav the bracha of spirituality. He always understood which of his kids are according to that approach. He blesses Yaakov to be great, and then Yaakov begins his journey to Haran. Ishmael, Esav over here, though, realizes, whoa, maybe I did something wrong along the way. And he says, maybe I should take new wives. And he now goes to Ishmael's daughters and marries 2 of Ishmael's daughters, which Kabbalistically, when Esav and Ishmael get together, when the West and the Arab world get together, leads to a lot of problems for us beyond the scope of this class, Kabbalistically. But on the simple level, Esav takes on more wives, but he doesn't divorce the first ones, meaning Esav is still not righteous. He still wants to kill his brother, and but he wants to look a little bit better in his father's eyes, but he's angry and he's waiting for Yaakov to return. But then Yaakov runs away. And with the last minute, we get to this week's Parshat Vayetze, where Yaakov runs away from Haran. According to the Midrash, takes a 14-year detour in the yeshiva, but then continues on to Haran, and the Parsha starts off this week with Yaakov going to bed at night, almost missing the spot of Yerushalayim, but this great miracle happens, and he falls asleep in Yerushalayim, and he has a dream of the ladders with the angels going up and down the ladder. And that is the start of this week's parasha, but we're good for today. Questions? Okay, awesome. Thank you guys. Have a great
Thank
day.
you.
Again, sorry for the delay, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Take care.